The United States says there has been some changes in visa processing for foreign nationals traveling to the U.S. Among them, from this week, national interest exceptions are no longer required for travel. To expand on the conversation, I'm joined now by U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Todd Haskell. Ambassador Haskell, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of people hoping, especially first-time visa applicants, were left very disappointed when they heard that they are on this list of, this backlog that could essentially mean that the processing could happen in 2022.
Actually, I should point out that this is a good news story, right? What's happened is that President Biden has lifted the proclamation that limited travel for people from South Africa to go to the United States. Essentially, before, you've mentioned the national interest exceptions. We're only allowing people from here and also from Europe, also from China, from the UK, to go to the United States if they had a particular purpose, like to work under a special contract or maybe to study there. But if you just wanted to go visit, we were limiting that, and we were limiting that because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Some 700,000 Americans have died as a result of the pandemic, so we were taking extreme actions. That's no longer true. We're open for tourists again. The main thing is, as long as someone can show that they're vaccinated and that they've got a PCR negative test, they can now travel to the United States. The problem is we haven't been doing visa applications for about 18 months. So we have this sudden rush of people who have either signed up before or are signing up now, and we don't quite have the capacity to handle that much. So there are waiting lists to get a visa appointment to apply. But we're working in all kinds of innovative ways. We want to do this in a socially distanced, safe way in our consulates across the country. So that limits the amount of numbers we can have. But we're trying to figure out different ways to do it. But yes, there are significant waits if you were just applying now. If, on the other hand, you already have a visa, please come on down, show your vaccination certificate at the airport, and you can fly to the United States right away.
You speak about some of the other options that you're exploring to ensure that you do deal with that backlog. What are some of the ideas that you have in mind, and how will the processing work to ensure that, I'm hearing that it's not going to be early 2022. It could go even further for those who are hoping to come to the U.S.
Right. I think there have been some news stories suggesting that the wait is 5 or 6 months. And I would say it's possible that when you initially go through the process to apply, you might get a number like that. We're looking at things we could do, whether expanding the number of hours that people apply so there doesn't have to be so many people in the waiting room at once. We're looking at all the ways we can issue visas without interviews, where people can do it by mail. And people can go to our website, which is za.usembassy.gov, and then /visas. And they can see different things. For instance, if you've had a visa that expired less than 2 years ago, you can get a new visa just through the mail. Alternatively, if mom and dad have a visa and the kids don't and they're under 14, the 14-year-olds can get a visa by mail. This is a way of clearing people out of waiting rooms. One thing that we do have, if you go to the website right now and you apply, you try to get an appointment, it might show a long wait, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to open up additional spots in December, in January, so that if people who do get an appointment that's far out in the future can check back periodically and try to grab one of those appointments as they open up. Yeah. We're doing whatever we can to make sure that people are able to visit, because it's good for both of our countries when people travel back and forth.
The NIEs are no longer required for travel. What does this essentially speak to?
Well, what it was before is we recognized that while maybe going to Disneyland was not an essential purpose, and therefore we weren't going to allow tourist visas, even if people qualified to go to the United States, people who were going as students or were going to perhaps work as an agricultural worker in the United States, those folks could get national interest exceptions, NIEs, as you said, because that was an important purpose. And so even though there was still a risk of the pandemic coming that way and spreading, those were important enough purposes that the cost-benefit analysis made it worthwhile to do. But for, again, a simple tourism visit, those NIEs are no longer necessary. You don't have to prove that you're going for a good reason. You just have to get an appointment to qualify for the visa and show that you've been vaccinated.
COVID-19 has been a major factor, especially COVID-19 testing ahead of travel has also been a headache for a lot of travelers. Let's talk now about some of the processes that are required for travel when it comes to COVID-19, the J&J vaccine, Pfizer, a lot of questions and controversy around the actual jab.
Right. Well, we will accept any vaccination that's done here in South Africa, and folks should show government-issued proof that they've had it. But the J&J, the one J&J shot or 2 shots of the Pfizer will qualify for entry to the U.S. I will say that none of this stuff is shown at the consulate when the person applies for the visa. You get the visa, but then when you get to the airport, the airline will request evidence that you've had the vaccination and also that you've had a test within 72 hours of travel. And with those 2 things, people can travel to the States. A lot of people say, why do you need both? I need both. I need to show that I've been vaccinated, and I need to show that I've been tested before I travel to the United States. Actually, I need to show that I've been tested before I travel to South Africa as well. So it's out of an abundance of caution. I mean, there's a lot of people on a plane together. They're all sitting very closely together, so we do require the PCR test as well, and also the vaccination. That won't happen at the consulate. The consulate will just take the application, but that requirement will be at the airport.
What are some of the trends that you've noted during this unprecedented time when it comes to the willingness to travel and, well, the inability to also travel when it comes to some of the restrictions that are in place?
Yeah, I will say, I mean, one thing interesting for me, nature of my job, I travel a fair bit, and I even traveled early in the pandemic a few times and through it. I think people are a lot more reluctant to travel than they once were, but I do sense that there's an opening up. Certainly, the massive response we've had to this announcement that we're going to start considering applications again would suggest that there's some people who are ready to go now. The numbers in South Africa right now are looking great. I hold thumbs that they stay that way.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, we've had a number of updates here in South Africa. I mean, we had one this morning when it comes to where we're standing with COVID-19 and the number of people who've been vaccinated and the overall spread of the actual virus. Is there such an update in the U.S. which would make South Africans feel more assured that traveling there would also not be a factor where they can get infected with COVID-19?
Yeah, I wish I could say that we were doing as well as South Africa right now. I can't. I think we all have different waves at different times. We are coming off a pretty serious wave. I think yesterday, I want to say there were about 70,000 new cases in the U.S. And you're in the hundreds, I believe, here in South Africa. So the situation is better. There's different parts of the country that are better than others. It does seem like the Northeast, New York, those places are doing very well. Some places in the center of the country are not doing as well, so it's kind of a mixed bag. I was impressed the last time I was in New York City, which was just a couple of months ago. To enter a museum, to enter a restaurant, to do all kinds of things, you had to show that you were vaccinated. That's not true in every part of the country, but people can do research if they are feeling a little bit concerned and check which places are the safest. One thing that is true is that even with the high caseload, the number of deaths, the number of hospitalizations has steadily dropped as people get vaccinated. You know, vaccinations are the trick to limiting the impact of this pandemic. And I think in those parts of the country where that's accepted, in the U.S., we're seeing the numbers come down and stay low.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure.
Acting U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Todd Haskell, there, giving us an update on some of the developments when it comes to those who are hoping to travel to the U.S., also speaking about that backlog, that it could take you even into the year 2022 when it comes to especially first-time visa applicants hoping to travel abroad.